Happy New Year to all of our in-house folks, all of our online viewers. So grateful to have a new year. So grateful to be together with you this morning. So glad that you guys, some of you were up to midnight last night. Anybody? All right, a lot of you. And still, here you are. God bless you. This Sunday, for a preacher, is kind of a perfect storm of challenges. One of the hardest parts of preaching, first of all, is just this. Many of you think standing up in front of people and speaking. You know, after you've been doing that for like 30 years, it gets a little easier over time. One of the hardest parts of preaching is figuring out what you're going to preach. It's kind of like, you ever go to the Cheesecake Factory? Right? They have, I actually looked this up, 21 pages and 250 entrees on their menu. There is so much to choose from. How do you decide? There's actually, it's like the more options we have, it actually invokes a paralysis. Like, people they have too many choices. They won't buy anything because they can't decide what. And the Bible is like the Cheesecake Factory menu, like times 1,000. Because you got 66 books, 1,189 chapters, and 31,103 verses to choose from. And I can tell you that not all individual verses, but all of those verses have a sermon in them. And most of them have like multiple sermons in them. And so you got this vast selection. It's like, where do you begin? What do you preach? And the hardest messages are the ones that I have to start from scratch. It's like, okay, this Sunday, what am I going to preach this Sunday? And I do a lot of series preaching. One, because I think it's great for us to camp on a theme and kind of keeps us in, thinking about, like, for example, through Advent on joy and kind of unpacking joy in different dimensions. And so having that kind of intensified focus over a period of time is helpful. But it's also really helpful for a preacher because you always know what's coming up. And so I'll see something 3 weeks out. Oh, I know I'm going to be preaching about this in 3 weeks, and I start pulling material together. When you have to start from scratch, you're just like literally looking at a blank piece of paper and 31,103 verses. What in the world? Where do you go? What do you do? So we come out of Christmas and Advent, and we've used this series, and then I'm going to start a new series next week, but this is a terrible Sunday to start a new series, right? Typically, it's not the 1st of January. It's either like the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, or 30th. And it's kind of like, do you start something new? And I actually, this is a cool story. We're going to celebrate the Lord's Supper today. And I had to run into my office and get more elements because I didn't have enough packed. You guys you surprised me today, so God bless you. I'm so grateful for your presence here. Anyway, typically kind of a low, so it's like, it's a Sunday that I have to start from scratch every time, and that's just the hardest way to go. And this is where you guys, I want you to pull out your violins. We feel so right. I know that this is of no consequence to you, but it does set up. This happened in 2015. I discovered an event. It takes place every year in Times Square as a part of their New Year's celebration. It's called Good Riddance Day. Good Riddance Day. It's an event that's sponsored by a company called Shred It, and go figure, they have machines that shred documents. That's what they do to keep all your information confidential. And so Shred It sponsors this event called Good Riddance Day, And people can go down to Times Square with a piece of paper and they can write whatever it is that they want to leave behind in the last year and be free of as they head into the new year. They describe it this way: offering a fresh start for the new year by destroying any and all unpleasant, embarrassing, and downright forgettable memories from the past year and pave the way for new memories in the new year. Shred it and forget it. Sounds great, doesn't it? Shred it and forget it. And I'm struck by the popularity of the event, by how many people actually flock to Times Square to participate in this activity. Not so much that people have things that they want to forget. I mean, like a lot of us have things that we would like to leave in the past. But that so many people are interested and attracted to actually going to someplace and doing something, some kind of action that is symbolic of that transition from going from old into the new year. So, kind of cool, I thought, when I first heard about it. But then I started thinking about it, and I find people to not be very good, even when they try, not be very good at forgetting things that they want to forget. We're really good at forgetting things we want to remember, right? I forget where I put my keys, I forget birthdays, and forget things that I was supposed to do, and things that right? We forget a lot of things that we want to remember. But we have a really hard time forgetting things that we want to forget. And I've also observed that things that we like to forget often have what I call dangling participles. There are things that come with them that even when we try to forget, they don't go away. For example, right? If you overspent this Christmas, theoretically, you could take all those receipts and put them in a shredder and shred them up, but your credit card company is still going to want you to pay the bill. They're going to want you to pay the debt that you rung up. Your landlord is still going to want you to pay your rent next month, your mortgage, right? That we might like to forget that email that we sent in haste to our boss that got us in hot water, but that doesn't change the fact that we ticked our boss off. We might like to forget that medical report that we were dreading, but it's still there. That while we might like to forget things, we're not very good at it, and it's not always that easy to unravel ourselves from the things that we get tied up in. It's kind of like, once that toothpaste comes out of the tube, it just doesn't go back in. And God offers us something better than good riddance. God offers us good redemption. Good redemption. And so when I discovered Good Riddance Day in 2015, I declared this Sunday every year henceforth to be Good Redemption Sunday. The first Sunday after Christmas is now Good Redemption Sunday, so I never have to worry about what I'm going to preach on that Sunday again. And it's also, I think, a really, really good thing for us to process and to think about. What is it that we are walking out of from 2022? And where is that, and how is that going to play out in our lives in the coming year? Good Redemption Sunday. Redemption, we all know what that is, right? If you live in California, every time you buy a soda bottle, a bottle of water, you pay 5 cents for every bottle. And it has a little tag on it that says CA Redemption. And if you take that to one of the California Redemption Centers, they will give you 5 cents back as you put them in one by one and you get your nickel. Most of us don't do that. We either put them in the blue recycled trash can, or we take them to the recycler and they give us like pennies, like a penny and a half a can instead of the 5 cents that we pay for. But it's redemption. It's buying something back from us when we redeem those things. It's also the word that's used to describe what Jesus accomplished for us on the cross. But Christ has redeemed us from the curse, bought us back from the curse pronounced by the law. When he was hung on the cross, he took upon himself the curse for our wrongdoing. David said, "Blessed is the one whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord does not count against them, and in whose spirit there is no deceit." Forgetting is elusive, but redemption is freedom. Redemption is liberation. It's freedom from guilt. David said, "Then I acknowledge my sin to you. I did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin." Right? Every sin has a price that comes with it. Jesus pays that price so that the guilt of our sin can be forgiven. Now, there may still be things that we have to pay on earth, our credit card bill, but there's no longer hell to pay for any sin, for any transgression, through Christ's sacrifice for us on the cross. Freedom from guilt. Freedom from the grip of regret. Isaiah says, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." He says, first, forget the former things, but I think almost maybe like I did, like, that'd be cool, but maybe the better thing to say is do not dwell on the past. Do not dwell on it. Do not live into it. Do not make it the focus of your attention. You can be free from regret and the mistakes that we've made and the toothpaste that we've squeezed out of the tube. Do not dwell on it. Freedom from shame. Isaiah says, "Do not be afraid. You will not be put to shame. Do not fear disgrace. You will not be humiliated. You will forget the shame of your youth and remember no more the reproach of your widowhood." Shame's power over our lives is protected by its hiddenness. It is protected by the fact that it's something that we don't want other people to know because we're ashamed of it. And as long as we keep that to ourselves, it becomes a prison that we dwell in. When we discover that the things that we're ashamed of are no longer the verdict on our lives, because we've been freed of the guilt, because we've been freed of the transgression, because it's no longer the verdict on our lives, we no longer have to hide it. We no longer have to keep it a secret. We can let it out. We can tell other people. Because no matter what anybody else says, God says we're forgiven. God says we are set free. God says we are redeemed. And here's what shame will never tell you. When you speak it, when you bring it out of the darkness into the light of the day, it breaks its power over you. The act itself liberates us. It's why they begin AA meetings with a confession. My name's Tim and I'm an alcoholic. I'm not, but if I were, just to be clear, believe me, I have my addictions. It's just not that one. Right? It's out there. So you can't be judged by it again and again. I mean, there might be people who do, but here's the reality. Most of the time, and most of the people we encounter in our lives do not judge. They love. They embrace. They accept. We actually can forget some things that we want to forget, but not with a shredder, with surrender, with bringing it out into the light and laying it out there. You don't have to throw it, not to everyone in the world needs to know the deepest, darkest secrets of your lives, but someone you know, someone you love, someone you trust. If you don't have somebody like that, I've got a lot of secrets. I mean, a lot of your secrets. And Deb doesn't even know, right? It kind of just goes with the job. Freedom from the weight of the burden. David said, when I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy on me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. Have you ever had something that you're hiding? And the longer you carry that, the bigger and the harder the burden becomes, and it just weighs on you more and more and more. It's like those, we used to, when I was a kid, go to the tractor pull at the fair, and the tractor starts off with this weight in the back, and then it goes down the track, and as it moves down, the weight moves farther and farther up until it stops the tractor in its tracks, right? There are a whole lot of people that are being run into the ground, stopped in their tracks, because they're carrying this burden the redemption has set us free from. Freedom, not just from the past, but freedom to a new future. I saw this quote this week from, it's a Twitter, @SharonJames. I have no idea who she is. I have no idea. Don't look her up and say, oh, well, Tim quoted her. She must be like some wise prophet or something. She said something that I read that really struck a chord. Forgiveness prevents us from getting stuck in the bad parts of our stories. Forgiveness prevents us from getting stuck in the bad part of our stories and opens the door for a new ending. Unforgiveness does the opposite. Unforgiveness keeps us stuck in the bad part of our stories and will determine our future. Forgiveness frees us to a new future. Paul said, I've got my eye on the goal where God is beckoning us onward to Jesus. I am off and running and I'm not turning back. Right? There is a past. I've been liberated from it. I've been freed from it, but I have my eyes, right? It's not enough to say, I'm not going to dwell on something, because when you say I'm not going to dwell on it, you actually end up dwelling on not dwelling on it, and you're still dwelling on it. So you have to take that dwelling someplace else. Paul says, I have my eyes fixed on, I'm looking forward, I'm dwelling on this, beckoning onward to Jesus, off and running. In this passage that Paul says this is in Philippians chapter 3. What is it that he's going towards? What is it that he's running after? What is it that he's dwelling on? He says this, I want to know Christ. I want to know Christ. He says, I want to know Christ in my victories, in my triumphs, celebrating with, the power of the resurrection. And I want to know Christ, his presence, his grace, his mercy, his comfort in my sufferings. So whatever it is, triumph or tragedy, I want to know Jesus. I want to meet Jesus in it. I want to know Christ. The series that we're going to start next week, going into the new year, I'm titling it Inside Out. Inside Out. And it's about growing in our relationship with Jesus. It's a lifelong journey. We've never arrived. And I think it's something that's always good to come back to. How can I take the next step in knowing Jesus more completely and more fully? Because the transformation we want in our lives, the change that we want to happen, the better future that we're looking forward to, does not typically come from external forces. It's New Year's resolutions. People make them, and very rarely do people keep them. It's hard to change things from the outside in. Redemption is about transformation that takes place from the inside out. And that inside work is Christ in us. That's where we're going as we go into the new year. I want to know Christ. While we might like to forget redemption, redemption makes restoration possible and preferable. When you take your soda bottle back to redeem it and they give you your money, that bottle that you returned does not go to the dump. Right? It goes to the recycler. And it's going to be taken and broken down to its elements and put back together in for some other use. That's what God is in the business of doing. His redemption is about recycling our sin and our shame and our pain. Paul says, we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. God is taking our trash and is recycling it for our good and for our future. It's often hard to see in the moment. Deb talked about rope boat vision. One of the values of remembering how God has met us in the past is it gives us confidence to move into the future, knowing, hey, I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know where this is going to go. I don't know how I'm going to get through it, but I know that God showed up for me in the past. I'm going to believe that he will lead me into and be with me into the future. Through redemption, we learn. We learn from our heartache and our pain and our sin and our shame. I'm not one to say the only way to learn is through our mistakes. I'm actually not a fan of learning through my mistakes. I would much rather learn through your mistakes. But if I'm making mistakes, and I do, I then do want to learn from them. I don't want to waste what comes with it. We learn if we redeem. If we just shred it and forget it, we often repeat it, learn from it. We're shaped by it. Paul says we rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope, and hope does not disappoint us because God has poured out his love into our hearts by the Holy Spirit. That stuff that he's recycling, he is remolding and shaping us into his vessels for his purposes. We're shaped by it. We minister through it. The God of all comfort comforts us in our troubles so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves have received from God. Our pain, locked up, hidden shame holds us down, paralyzes us, imprisons us. Our pain and shame confessed to others invites them to open up their hearts and their lives to us. I rarely preach a sermon on a Sunday and talk about something really great that I did and have people come up afterwards and talk to me about it. But if I talk about my sorrow, my heartbreak, my heartache, my pain, my shame, almost always someone will approach me. God's power is made perfect in our weakness, and all of our instincts are the opposite. We want to be strong. We want to put up a solid front for people to know that we're solid people. Paul says, first of all, you're not. Second of all, when you share your pain, you invite others into your story, and you invite them out of their closets. Vulnerability is contagious. And God then receives glory for it. Paul says, we now have the light of Christ shining in our hearts. But we ourselves are like fragile clay jars containing this great treasure. This makes it clear that our great power is from God, not from ourselves. We share our lives, our pain, our sorrow, and people see God's working in us, liberating us from pain, liberating us from regret, liberating us from shame, shining through the cracks of our broken pieces that God has put back together. People see God at work in their lives, and it gives them hope for God for their lives. God gets glory for the transformation that he's done in us, because he is good. So, good redemption is not a sermon. It's an exercise. It's something that you need to do this week if you want the fruit of what I'm talking about this morning. If you picked up the paper on the way in, you have a worksheet that I would like to challenge you at some point in this week. Sooner rather than later, because you forget things that you want to remember. So if you want to remember it, you'll probably forget it. So like early in the week, put it on the refrigerator, someplace, but do this exercise. There's 7 questions. What do I need to confess? What are my regrets? What is my sin? Where am I missing the mark for what God has for my life, and I know it? What do I need to confess? Who do I need to forgive? What story do I not want to be stuck in the future? Who do I need to forgive? There's a very good chance that one of the people you need to forgive is yourself. And when we don't forgive ourselves, we take that in the future as well. Who do I need to forgive? Whoever it is, extend your apology. Third question, are there agreements I need to break? Agreements are, they often come in the form of vows. Something bad happens, and we say, I'm never going to let that happen again. And so I will always be prepared. I will never put myself out there, or I will never open up my heart again, or I will never, those agreements are prisons, and they lock us in. And they're often very, very subtle in the making, but very, very powerful in the havoc they wreak over our lives. Look at your heartbreak. What did you decide because that happened that you hope will keep it from ever happening again? And oftentimes those agreements are very general and close out a lot of life over a very, very specific instance. Are there agreements I need to break? Are there wounds I need God to heal? Jesus came to bind up broken hearts and set captives free. Our instinct is to hide those wounds, even from God. I don't want God to see the ugliness of my life, and that's exactly why Jesus comes. I was thinking about this. If I don't have anything to write on this form that I'm sharing with you, if I don't have anything to write on there, I don't even need Jesus. It's because I have all kinds of stuff to write on there that I need Jesus in my life. Is there wounds I need God to heal? Is there shame I need to bring out into the light? You don't have to tell everybody. Tell somebody. Is there something that nobody else in your life knows and you're scared to death that if they find out that they will reject you? They will turn their back on you. They will hate you. They will think ill of you, and it'll be the end. Is there anything in your life that is a secret? Secrets kill. Secrets bury us. Is there something that I need to bring out into the light of day? Are there lessons that I need to learn from my experience? And is there a testimony for me to share? Okay, that's your assignment for this coming week. And this is what I want you to do. I don't want you to shred it and forget it. What I want you to do is I want you to complete it, write it out, and I want you to, ready for this? I want you to wash it. Wash it. Or wash if you're from Indiana. I want you to wash it. Now, I don't know if it's right, if it's a good thing to put it in your washing machine. Deb leaves stuff in her pockets all the time, and it comes out all right. So I think your washing machine, but if you're not comfortable with that, it's cool. Just go to the sink. Put some soap on there, put it under the water, wrinkle it up, wring it out, and then take it to your blue trash can and recycle it. Okay? Good redemption. It's an action. It's something that God has done for us and something that we receive from Him and then walk in. Not a shredder, a recycler who's the creator of heaven and earth, the lover of your soul, your future. Amen? You have your assignment.